February 11th, 2014 meeting of the Downers Grove Village Council. It is my privilege to call this meeting to order. There are copies of our agenda on either side of the room. If you haven't already done so, please avail yourself of a copy and you can follow along with our proceedings tonight. There will be multiple opportunities for public comment, both with respect to items that are on our agenda tonight, as well as a segment under item 4, which is reserved for public comments of a general nature with respect to items that are not appearing on our agenda tonight. So anyone who is here for the purposes of communicating any questions or comments of a general nature will be item 4 on the agenda when we entertain those questions and comments. It is our honored privilege to begin our meetings by reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. So at this point in time, I would ask everyone here to please rise and join us in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Terrific. Thank you very much. And now I'd like to ask our fine village clerk, April Holden, to please call the roll.
Commissioner Jose?
Here.
Commissioner Olson?
Here.
Commissioner Rankin? Here. Commissioner Barnett?
Here.
Commissioner Neustadt?
Here.
Commissioner Durkin?
Here.
Mayor Tully?
Here. Thank you very much. It brings us to item 3, minutes of prior council meetings. We have one set of meeting minutes to approve tonight, and those are our minutes from last week or so, February 4th, 2014. Are there any questions, comments, corrections to those minutes from any members of the village council? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'm abstaining.
One abstention? I gotta remember to put that box down for the abstentions. I'm sorry, Commissioner. The minutes will be adopted with one abstention, all others voting in favor. And that brings us right to item 4, public comments of the general nature. As previously advertised, if any members of the public have any questions or comments of a general nature they would like to share with the village council this time, we would invite you to please come down to the podium, and the protocol is to give us your name and address, and we would welcome hearing from you. And I deliberately slowed down my cadence so that I would give Mr. Waldak time to reach the podium. Good evening, Mr. Waldak.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor, Council, staff. Bill Waldak, 1409 Willard Place in Downers Grove. And would like to comment on the meeting that you had several weeks ago on the chicken, which I call the chicken convention. I had three major points to bring up. First was that the issue of risk was never brought up. I mean, it was brought up but never fully answered. The response from the public was, we'll just build it next to you and you'll get used to it. And that really doesn't address the risk at all. It's kind of like crossing in the middle of the street 12 times and expecting that the 13th time you're safe. So that really didn't address it. The other item that was the swag number that was, we all know where swag numbers come from. And the swag number was about 30 lots, 30 coops. And like I say, we all know where swag comes from. When you think about it, if you use that number, you have neighbors on either side. You also have a rear lots. So you're talking about affecting 90 lots. And if you add the number of people, you're talking about roughly 200 people that can be adversely affected. And excuse me here. So I've never seen a council kind of write off the health, safety, and property values of 200 residents. Never have I seen that. And if you go back to the meeting, there was also, if you listen to the comments at the meeting, there was also discussion about neighbor, we call it neighbor nullification, I guess. And if you go back, you can listen to Commissioner Neustadt's comments about how neighbors might nullify the opportunity for someone to get a coop because they don't take care of their leaves or their snow or their garbage properly. And I kind of took exception to that because every week up here, just about every week up here, one or most or all of you comment on how great the residents of Downers Grove are. What a great community, what a great neighbors everybody is. And I take exception because when push comes to shove, if you don't allow this neighbor nullification, it just assumes that the people aren't trustworthy, that they're vindictive. Another point to that is maybe if somebody can't take care of their own snow or their leaves or their grass clippings, maybe they can't take care or shouldn't be able to take care of something as important as or as risky as chicken coops. And maybe it also assumes that chicken owners can also be trusted and are good people. And that's not necessarily the case. Yet we're here in this debate because a number of them flouted the law and made it difficult to get compliance at the expense of taxpayers. My second point that I want to bring up is from spring to early fall, when you turn on the TV, the radio, in your print media, cyber media, even on the village website, there's a discussion of the West Nile virus. And I came across a number of writings, articles, where local authorities across the country use sentinel chickens. And these are small flocks, usually groups of 6, that are placed to attract mosquitoes and are tested to determine the presence of West Nile virus. West Nile is nothing to, it's dangerous. It can be deadly. And the key here is that they use these sentinel chickens because they attract mosquitoes. And who wants to have a West Nile virus attracting test tubes living next door to them? And during these times we're asked to use repellent. Yet you expand the chicken coops, you're actually promoting mosquito attraction. Finally, there was the argument of property values and the property rights. And at the meeting, you can listen to the argument, and if you're looking for it, I think Don Jankowski brought it up and spoke basically on it. He said, basically, it's my property and I can do what I want to. Sounds like a bad Leslie Gore song. I'm glad I don't have neighbors like that. But, and I thought you were going to be talking about the not the comp plan, but ordinances. As long as you're considering property rights to increase the danger to property, are you going to allow people to protect themselves? Will you allow people to redirect the contaminated drainage away from their property to keep it back on the chicken coop owner's property? Will you allow people to build a 10-foot high brick wall fence to protect the neighbors and property from danger? Unlike chickens, brick walls do not attract coyote, fox, skunks, rats, and mice. It also wouldn't attract West Nile mosquitoes and wouldn't smell or make any noise. So actually, brick walls are really safer. So why wouldn't you allow them? So once again, I'm asking you not to expand the chicken ordinance, and I have a lot of material but limited time, so thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Waldeck.
Have a good meeting. And about the bad weather we've been having, Mayor, last time I was up here, I asked you to take care of it. Are you considering on maybe appointing somebody else in charge of the weather? That's all. Thank you.
If I can assign the blame, I would ask for a volunteer right now.
There we go.
I don't see any hands going up. Thank you. Any other questions or comments of a general nature from any members of the audience with respect to items not appearing on our agenda tonight? Seeing none, we'll move right to item 5, which is reserved for council member reports. Members of the council have an opportunity to report out on various goings-on within the community. God bless you. We'll begin with Commissioner Barnett.
I have no report, Mayor.
Thank you. Commissioner Olson.
Yeah, I just want to thank you and apologize I wasn't able to join you last week. I was out of town on business. I just wanted to note today, something I've been watching, today the county board passed an ordinance or a resolution that stated their opposition to any legislative effort to amend the Illinois Constitution to authorize a graduated income tax. I think this is an issue that we need to be mindful of, and I spoke with some of our folks today, and I understand that DuPage Mayors and Managers Legislative Committee is exploring this issue currently, and so I was going to ask for an item of new business on this, but I'll hold off on that until after DuPage Mayors and Managers have time to explore the issue. But just, I think that this is an important issue for our state. It's an important issue for the people of Downers Grove, and it's an issue that I think we should be aware of moving forward. So look forward to keeping that on the radar. Obviously, it is on the radar of DuPage Mayors and Managers, and then perhaps on the radar of this council at a future time, if there's desire to do so. That's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Just to pick up on that, I know it is on the radar screen of DuPage Mayors and Managers, and right now it's at the Legislative Committee stage, but when that committee reports out a recommendation, it comes up to the Executive Board and then the entire membership. Should there be a recommendation to take a position on it, which would not surprise me in the slightest, I don't want to make any predictions, that would be premature, but it wouldn't surprise me in the slightest, then what typically will happen is there'll be a model resolution that'll be distributed to the membership for various communities to consider whether or not they want to enact that resolution. And obviously, that could certainly be something we could entertain at that time if it was the will of this council.
I look forward to that.
We'll keep you posted. And we have plenty of representation on DuPage Mayors and Managers, so we'll keep a finger on the pulse of that. Thank you. Commissioner Neustadt?
Thank you, Mayor. Excuse me, our village has got a few job openings right now, and on our website at downers.us you can see those. There's a fleet services manager, engineering manager, bus driver, crossing guard, and of course volunteer opportunities. You can sign up for all those volunteer opportunities online, and Nick Santoro, who's with us tonight, actually is in charge of that program, I think. So a lot of opportunities, and it also links to other agencies and municipalities across the village. So a good spot to check out for some possible job opportunities. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Although an important disclaimer, if your last name is Barnett, Olson, Neustadt, Tully, Durkin, Renkin, or Jose, I'm sorry, you just can't apply. No patronage. Commissioner Durkin.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I had the opportunity to represent our village at the West Central Municipal Conference 2014 Legislative Agenda Breakfast last Saturday, and I brought back for information purposes only for our staff, along with my colleagues and yourself, Mayor, the agenda that they had presented and went over thoroughly. A lot of it mirrors what we're accustomed to seeing with the DuPage Mayors and Managers organization. But what's interesting in here is that they really they're putting a lot of effort towards regional transportation priorities, everything from rail to highways, including bicycle and pedestrian, and freight. And they also have some information here regarding federal issues that they're lobbying for, or will be lobbying for. So I'll give this over to the village manager for all to look at if they desire to do so. Excuse me. And the other thing that they talked about is something that I've actually been trying to get some motivation within our own county, and I'm actually very pleased to see that the West Central Municipal Conference, which is an organization that was funded in 1980, consisting of over 51 municipalities, townships, Brookfield Zoo, and 2 community colleges in the western Cook and eastern DuPage counties, actually just submitted a release day press release regarding the formation of several years back the Suburban Water Task Force. A subgroup established by the West Central Municipal Conference joined forces with the state legislators in announcing legislation aimed at establishing the Water Rate Protection Act. House Bill 4288, sponsored by State Representative Emmanuel Chris Welch of Hillside, Democrat, and Senate Bill 2907, sponsored by State Senator Steve Landeck, Democrat of Bridgeview, are designed to create an entity similar to the Citizens Utility Board, also known as CUB, whose sole purpose would be to objectively and fairly regulate Lake Michigan water. According to the Suburban Water Task Force, this legislation would put an end to the automatic and whimsical taxing of natural resources by the city of Chicago. So I'll give this also to the manager, but it'll be interesting to see considering that the DuPage Water Commission is going to be speaking at the next DuPage Mayors and Managers Conference, their take on this proposed legislation, both in the House and in the Senate. And that's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner, and thank you for attending that legislative breakfast and bringing this information back to us. I'm just flipping through the legislative agenda for 2014 for West Central Municipal Conference. I noticed a lot of similar themes and issues with respect to that of our own DuPage mayors and managers. And so I'm glad to see that there's like thinking in terms of protecting municipal interests. One thing that's not in here is the issue that Commissioner Olson just raised, and I suspect it's also on their radar screen, and we'll probably be seeing an amendment to that because I'm sure it's just as important to those municipalities as it is to our own. Thank you for bringing that back to us. Commissioner Rankin?
I have no report, Mayor.
Thank you. Commissioner Jose?
Thank you, Mayor. Just wanted to make everybody aware of the DuPage PADS fundraiser that's taking place at Yorktown Center in Lombard at Tom and Eddie's. Now, you might be wondering why I'm telling people to go to Lombard, but what it is, it's a fundraiser for the renovations that are going on at the First Congregational United Church of Christ here, right here in Downers Grove. If you go there on February the 18th or March the 4th, which are both Tuesdays, from between 4 and 9 p.m., 10% of the proceeds of your meal will go to the DuPage PADS fundraiser there to help renovate and expand the bath and laundry facilities that are supporting the PADS ministry there. So I hope folks will take advantage of that if they're able to. If you go to the First Congregational United Church of Christ website, there's a little flyer to download to take with you. You can find that at http://uccdg.org. Hope you'll go out and support a good cause. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Very briefly, for my part, first of all, I just want to thank everyone who braved the frigid weather and came down to the 2014 Ice Festival, although I think on at least one day it was the Snow and Ice Festival. We had both a blizzard and ice, and people still came out and experienced all the sights and the different ice sculptures and the ice carvings and the other events that were going on in the downtown. And hopefully, as Commissioner Durkin urges every week, they did a little shopping while they were there. I must say that whatever was invested in the ice sculptures this year was probably going to get a great return, because I have a feeling those sculptures are still going to be there until 2016, given the weather that we're having. They all look like they were just put there. That was a good investment. I also want to advise or inform the community that the 2014 annual Relay for Life will be taking place once again at Downers Grove North High School in the outdoor track on Friday, June 27th, 2014, beginning at 5 o'clock p.m. It's a terrific event that raises funds for the American Cancer Society, and obviously there's probably no one of us in this room that doesn't know someone who hasn't been touched by the plague of cancer. And it's a great event. It's run here in Downers Grove at the high school every year. It's a terrific event to raise awareness and to celebrate survivors, and also raise funds to fight cancer on many different levels. The kickoff event was tonight. It was over there at DuPage Inn, where the kickoff event took place, with representatives from Relay for Life and the American Cancer Society. Woodridge Mayor Gina Cunningham was there as well, and we were both encouraged to start a little friendly competition in terms of starting a Downers Grove team and a Woodridge team, and to see who could raise the most money in support of this cause. So both Mayor Cunningham and I have our work cut out for us, but we have between now and June. We were promised very warm weather on June 27th, although frankly, right now, if it was 40 degrees, I'd take that. That would be great. Be no problem with that at all. So I would encourage everyone who's interested in signing up, and if you know anyone or you yourself have experienced this issue, then please lend your support. It's really easy to find. If you search for Relay for Life and Woodridge Downers Grove, you'll get right to the page, and you can sign up and start a team, and make sure you check off either Downers Grove or Woodridge. So make sure you, even if you're in Woodridge, check off Downers Grove, because I have to win that little battle now with Mayor Cunningham. So I want to encourage everyone to look forward to that, and we'll see that again in June.
Is that ethical? Just kidding.
It's called persuasive marketing.
It's
Entirely.
very competitive.
There's no Lanham Act violation, I guarantee you.
Good.
That's all I have. Thank you very much for your patience. It brings us to item 6, which is reserved for public hearings. We have no public hearings tonight, so it'll bring us right to item 7, which is our consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments from any members of the audience with respect to any of the items on the consent agenda? Questions or comments from members of the village council with respect to either item? Hearing none, may I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Newstead?
Aye.
Commissioner Durkin?
Aye.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner Rankin?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye. The consent agenda passes unanimously. That brings us to our active agenda under item 8. We have 3 items on our active agenda tonight. First, I have a motion to adopt an ordinance that would establish a crosswalk at Carpenter Street.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments from any members of the audience with respect to this item? Questions or comments from the village council? Hearing none, may I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Newstead?
Aye.
Commissioner Durkin?
Aye.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner Rankin?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye, that matter passes unanimously. Thank you. That brings us to item 8B as in boy. Do I have a motion to adopt an ordinance that would amend alarm code provisions to provide for a wireless radio system?
So moved.
Systems.
Second.
Any questions or comments from members of the audience? Questions or comments from members of the village council? May I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Newstead?
Aye.
Commissioner Durkin?
Aye.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner Rankin?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye, that matter also passes unanimously, and that brings us to item 8C as in cat. Do I have a motion to award $85,966.01 to Total Fire and Safety, Inc. for the purchase and installation of alarm panel equipment?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments from members of the audience? Questions or comments from members of the village council? Commissioner Olson, you're not going to take issue with the 1 penny?
I was thinking about it, but
May I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Newstead?
Aye.
Commissioner Durkin?
Aye.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Olson?
aye.
Commissioner Rankin?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye, you thought about it.
I did think about it.
That matter passes unanimously, and that brings us to the end of our active agenda. We are now on to item 9, our first reading or our workshop agenda. And we have 4 items on our workshop agenda tonight. These are items that are traditionally presented by staff for discussion and consideration by the village council for potential action at a later point in time. And I believe that item D, 9D as in David, is a discussion of village facilities, and that discussion will be taking place next door in our world-famous committee room.
That is
And
correct.
so what we will be doing, as we've done in the past, is when we get to the adjournment part of our meeting, we will adjourn into the committee room for continued discussion on that point. So we are probably going to cover items 9A, B, and C, God bless you, and the other items on the agenda, and then adjourn into the committee room. Would that be appropriate?
Well, we'll do item D next door, but we will do item C next week. So item C will not be discussed tonight. We will present that. That's the continuing discussion of the zoning
Yes.
ordinance. We have some more space on next week's agenda. We thought that'd be more appropriate. So if you're here for item C, I'm sure the mayor would welcome any questions or comments, but staff does not plan on presenting that item tonight.
That's correct. Thank you for reminding me of that. So what we will do is, before we adjourn into the committee room and conclude our business, at least in this room, I will ask if anyone's here who had any questions or comments on the proposed amendments to the zoning ordinance, although we will not be discussing it as a council tonight, but we'll obviously entertain any questions or comments if anyone here tonight has any. So if all that's now clear as mud, we'll go back to item 9A for presentation. Manager Fieldman.
It's an ordinance considering a special use on Ogden Avenue for a restaurant with a drive-through, and our Community Development Director, Tom DeBreiner, is here this evening.
Good evening, Mr. DeBreiner.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. We are looking at a project with a special use for a drive-through for a restaurant located at 2535 Ogden Avenue. That is approximately in this location on the south side of Ogden in the B3 zoning district. We're looking for approval on the March 4th, 2014 active agenda. The project itself is a new McDonald's restaurant with a drive-through situated between 2 office buildings and then some residential to the south, commercial across the street to the north as well. I included this particular, their landscape plan, their colored landscape rendering landscape plan, only because it is so good. It is obvious that they've done this kind of thing before. It was a joke, it's McDonald's, they do this all the time.
Is that a green roof, too?
Don't give him any ideas.
If it helps increase sales, they can use it.
But it's really a very good site design, currently there's a single-family home that's vacant on the property. They would be installing or constructing a 4,390 square foot restaurant with the drive-through. That's why we're here for the special use. It meets all of the B3 bulk requirements, setback, size, et cetera. They are providing twice the landscaping that the village would require, and 13 parking spaces instead of 8, which is good in terms of on-site circulation and avoiding problems off-site as well. It is consistent with the comprehensive plan, the commercial corridor element of the comprehensive plan in terms of encouraging redevelopment and a good design. Certainly this is an improved design. It will comply with all the stormwater rules, access, and public safety requirements. There was a traffic study done that shows that there is adequate gaps along Ogden Avenue in this location to provide access in and out. Staff reviewed that, were satisfied with the report. The applicant held a voluntary neighborhood meeting on November 26th, took in a lot of information, provided very good complete minutes of that meeting, and which are included in your packet. We're able to respond to, I think, all of the concerns that have been expressed. The Plan Commission then considered this at their meeting in a hearing on January 27th, recommended in favor unanimously of the project. This would result, I should say, the closing of the existing McDonald's located here and then moving it to that location, but with the brand new latest and greatest design, and that's what we get out of it, is a great new design from McDonald's. Be happy to try to answer any questions at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Dave Renner, and I know that a number of representatives of the petitioner are here tonight as well, and that's appreciated. And before I entertain questions from the audience, I just want to thank you for having that voluntary neighborhood meeting. That's certainly very Downers Grove-esque, so we appreciate it. Any questions or comments from any members of the audience with respect to this item at this juncture? Hearing none, any questions or comments from members of the Village Council? Commissioner Durkin?
Yeah, real quick. Just recently, they've reported, publications have regarding McDonald's and the number of sales and how their sales are conducted, that the supermajority of them are conducted through drive-through window and not necessarily the walk-through. Is there adequate expansion or room for them if they decide to expand from a 2 drive-up window to a 3 drive-up window on this property?
Well, as I mentioned, they are providing 2 times the amount of landscaping that we would require if for some reason they would need to do that. There is room in the rear certainly to expand. However, they're already providing the double ordering bays on the way through, so that's already an advancement over some of the other locations.
Right, but I understand majority of their sales are through the drive-up, so there are discussions of, which I can't recall the publication, I read it in, that they're going to go to a 3 drive-up window. The question is, there room, adequate room on this property if they so desire, since this is a state-of-the-art McDonald's?
Yes, well, you can see in the rear of the center here that there's...
I don't know, maybe there's somebody from their team that can answer.
Sure.
I'm Dean Przewozowski, I'm with McDonald's Corp. on the operations.
Please, if you wouldn't mind coming to the podium just so the folks at home can hear and hang on every word.
My name's Dean Przewozowski. I'm the area supervisor of the current locations and several other McDonald locations. I think you're referring to, if you heard that there's a 3rd window, it will be in the confines of that building. It's nothing more than a pull-forward window. So traditionally where you would pick up your food in a normal McDonald's, at times, some of our assembly times for the newer products are a bit longer, and sometimes we install a window a few feet down just so that we can get another car out of the way to better improve traffic. Truly, the 3 window, that was long ago, and this is our current model and standard for years and years to come. It is absolutely the state of the art and a side-by-side drive-through that can service people like no others. So I've been around for about 30 years, many different locations, so I can promise you that.
Read it in Cranes not too long ago, because I know that when your McDonald's on Ogden was being discussed, I went up at that meeting.
Yeah,
So,
thank you.
that's fine. I mean, I welcome you to town. I'm grateful you're coming here. I don't have any problems if you want to do 3 or 4 windows. I just want to make sure you have enough room on your property.
Absolutely.
That's all.
Yeah, I'm happy you asked the question. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for responding to that question.
Thank you for the clarification.
That's all I have.
Other questions, Commissioner Rankin?
I can't seem to locate it now. What will happen with the existing McDonald's that's moving here? What's going to happen with that building?
That, I don't have information on unless, it's going to close, but beyond that,
To be determined.
all right.
If you don't feel comfortable sharing that, that's fine too.
Good evening.
Dennis Summers, Area Real Estate Manager with McDonald's. The existing building that we're relocating over to this, we will demolish the building and just have a vacant lot, and then most likely sell it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, Commissioner?
No, thank you.
Okay, just want to make sure. Commissioner Newstat?
Thank you, Mayor. I think, this is great. I probably go to the McDonald's up there on the hill too often. I think I saw you there the other day, actually. This is going to be a much welcomed new addition. I know the one on the east side of town is a great McDonald's, and it's got a lot of traffic. This site is going to really be an economic development spur, I think, for the west side of Ogden Avenue. And if you think about the proximity to all the people and the IDOT building and all the real estate that's down there, I think it's going to be a great addition. The material provided in here addresses a lot of the neighborhood complaints about light screening and noise quality and all the things that we've done so well in our other drive-throughs around town, not only at fast food places, but at also pharmacies and all sorts of other drive-throughs. So thank you for adjusting those. I'm looking forward to it, and I think the only question I have, Tom, I can't really see it up there, and I couldn't get it on here real good. The in and out off of Ogden Avenue, does it look like there's going to be a dedicated right out and then left out also?
It's a inbound, one inbound.
One inbound and
it looks like a shared straight and left, and then a dedicated right.
Okay. I can see it better on the screen back here. Thank you. That's all I had. It looks great, and thank you for the hard work and all the supplemental information in the report.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other questions from members of the Village Council? Commissioner Jose?
Thank you, Mayor. Not so much a question as a comment. I'd just like to thank the folks from McDonald's for the high quality of the presentation and the obvious care that went into it, and all the written materials, and the fact that you looked at a number of different parcels in town and obviously did a lot of due diligence to figure out what the concerns would be in different areas and how to best address them. Having served on the Plan Commission and now up here on the council, I think it's one of, if not the best demonstration of how to look at the different areas, the concerns, and do everything you can to meet them. So thank you very much for that. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Durkin?
The gentleman who answered my question, I did find a publication was Bloomberg. Are you referring to what they refer to here as the fast forward drive-through?
Yes.
Okay, cool, thank you.
Thank you. Just from my own perspective, first of all, I know that this was a long time coming. There was a process that was followed, and it's very rewarding to see this come to fruition. And I want to thank the Economic Development Corporation as well as members of our own village staff and working with the petitioner to make this happen. I know it was been in the works for a while. So it's like a movie that you've been waiting to see come out. You hear all the buzz about it's filming and it's filming and it's filming, and then it's in post-production, and then you finally see the trailer, so that's kind of nice. Glad to see it. Now, Mr. Cass is going to correct me on something.
No, I just wanted to say one thing. I don't often do this, but I just wanted to throw a kudo out to GMX, which is the developer on the project. Andy Goodman, who was the lead person on their team, I've known him for 15 years, and we've been waiting for the day where we could do a project together. And so when he held that voluntary informational meeting, didn't come as a surprise to me. They do everything in a first-class way. It was just a pleasure working with them and McDonald's and the whole team, and so this should set the template on how a development should be done in Downers Grove. So thanks, Andy.
Thank you, Mr. Cassie. Sure.
Sorry to do this to you, but since it's about concluding here, my name is Henry Stillwell. I'm the attorney for the applicant, and on behalf of the entire project team, I do want to identify and thank your staff for all of its diligent work and the interaction that they provided for us. We've experienced this before, working in your community. You have a tremendous complement of staff members, and it does make the process much easier. and much more successful. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you. We appreciate you sharing that. That's always terrific to hear. And I appreciate all the accolades that have been thrown out. I am actually going to get to the zoning part of this in a second. Please.
Real quickly, I think that deal now, the obligation to reciprocate. Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. Wonderful team here. It's an honor for me to personally work with the McDonald's folks and their professional consultants. They're first class as well. But Commissioner Jose pointed out the extensive site selection process that we went through, and I have to say that we couldn't have gone through that process and worked diligently to get to this site without the help of Michael Casa and the Economic Development Commission staff. So he is first class. I've been doing this for about 25 years in a lot of communities around Chicagoland, and you have the best of the best running the charge at EDC. So you should be commended for that. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. Accolades all around. Thank you. We'd like to hear that for every project we have. And now I just have to address something that's going to seem far more pedestrian. That is whether this meets the criteria of 28.1902 of our zoning ordinance. In my opinion, it does, because this is number one. The only reason you're here for a special use is because of the drive-through, and a drive-through is a permitted special use in this area. We already have one that's down the street. This is simply replacing one for another, so to speak, so it shouldn't have any issues from that perspective. Not only meets all the standards and setbacks, there are no variances or exceptions are being requested, so all that's satisfied. And to the extent that there were any concerns about any of the issues that were raised by the one member of the public that spoke on this at the Planning Commission meeting, or I'm sorry, at the voluntary neighborhood meeting, I appreciate that those all have been proactively addressed. So I don't see any reason why this would not meet all the criteria of 28.1902. That's all I have. So thank you very much for being here and being responsive to our questions, and also appreciate the kind words. Any other questions or comments on this item? Very good. Well, I guess that brings us to the next one, 9B as in boy.
9B as in boy is further discussion of stormwater utility grant program. You may recall that the council was speaking of these issues and similar issues as we considered the FY14 budget. Here to present the proposal that really was generated with those discussions is our Public Works Director, Nan Newland.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. As Dave said, this item was based on council discussion during the just prior budget preparation process, and staff has prepared some draft language for a proposed credit under the credit incentive portion of the stormwater utility program, which the purpose is to encourage property owners to proactively manage stormwater on their properties. The program as proposed would have the following key points. Eligible costs would include design and construction for improvements that decrease the site runoff, the rate of site runoff, the volume of site runoff, and the quality of, and improve the stormwater quality, as well as reduce the impervious area on properties. Funding would be provided on a first-come, first-served basis to applicants that meet those program qualifications, up to a maximum of $5,000 for design and $20,000 for construction. We are proposing a 75% match, so that would be 75% reimbursement of the village for those improvements on the private property, and that would be on an annual basis. So if you want to put in a rain garden or eliminate some pavement that would reduce your runoff, those would be the type of eligible improvements on the sites. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you have. We're prepared to assist applicants by meeting with our stormwater administrator, and we have reached out to the Conservation Foundation, who through their Conservation at Home and Conservation at Work programs is willing to assist us with some education and presentations of some typical projects that might be eligible for this kind of work and to help educate our applicants.
Just a couple of extra points here. This program is designed for churches and religious institutions, and therefore, in thinking how those institutions generally work, they would be allowed to provide their 25% match in-kind contributions, which would be quantified and then applied towards their match. So for churches, and in-kind contributions would also be accepted. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. And just a quick question on that, just to elaborate on in-kind contributions. I mean, for example, if a a member of the congregation happened to be an architect or an engineer, they could provide their professional services as an in-kind contribution for a particular project, just so we have an idea of what kinds of in-kind contributions there might be. And obviously, there might be others as well in terms of even good old-fashioned labor.
That's correct. Those will be quantified and applied toward the 25% match.
Understood. Thank you. Questions or comments from any members of the audience with respect to this item? Questions or comments from members of the Village Council? Commissioner Rankin?
I should have asked Dave this before. Are they going to be required to have their engineering done before they get approval? Because that can be a significant cost.
The way it's proposed now is that the reimbursement would happen at the completion of the project. The reason for that is we thought the intention of the council discussions was to make sure the improvement was actually made, and a way to encourage the stormwater improvement to be made would be to pay for the project only after it's completed. Otherwise, we had a concern that a lot of the funding would be used only for design, and then we'd be giving grants for plans that may or may not be constructed.
Okay, I guess what I meant really was, did they have to do the engineering as part of their application before they could be considered?
No, we would work with them on the application process, much like we do on a cost share program, and give them information of whether their project would or would not be funded under the criteria, and then proceed with design and construction.
Okay, and then what would be an example of permit fees for permeable pavers for a parking lot that we would, it says that we would potentially waive that. I was just wondering what that might be.
It might just be a fee. There is a fee associated with this credit and incentive application. It really is a reimbursement for the staff time we spend to do those reviews. So that's what the typical fee would be.
And under our fee waiver policy in existence prior to the stormwater utility and still today, we can waive fees and do waive fees for not-for-profit agencies. Our permit fees are very competitive, generally less than 2% of the cost of construction.
Okay. I was going to bring up another item, but I don't know if we want to discuss this first or if I should bring up my other item.
I don't know because I don't know what it is.
Well, we had
I leave it to your judgment.
We had discussed previously, or I had brought up previously, that I'd like us to also consider if churches could have, churches or tax-exempt parcels could have a 10% lower rate. And I didn't know if it's appropriate to talk about it now, or if we should talk about this topic and then talk about that later.
I would suggest that maybe we just see who has questions on what's on the table, and then before we leave the topic, Commissioner, if you want to bring that up, that's fine.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
That's all for me then.
Okay. Any questions on the item that's on the table, Commissioner Barnett?
Thanks, Mayor. Conflicted on this thing quite a bit, to be honest with you. I applaud any attempt by this group or the village to be helpful to our religious community. But there's some things about this that I'm still having a hard time getting to where I feel like they're appropriate. One is this idea that we would, extend something to one group differently. Our cost share program we extend, I think, to all residential properties, right? It's available. So to me, there's kind of an equal application or equal accessibility there. In this case, I'm not sure that it's right to be saying that only the religious organizations would have access to this. I mean, Family Shelter Services comes to mind. There certainly are others who operate and maintain facilities or are part of, broader facilities. And it doesn't sit well with me to have that distinction made. I'm also kind of struck by, I think I mentioned this when we talked broadly about this at our planning meeting, I'm kind of struck by the math. And I know it's not necessarily all used every year, but we got a $300,000 contribution to the stormwater utility revenue of roughly $300,000 from NFPs. We give $100,000 of it back in education and park district, and now potentially another $200,000 back to encourage certain design behaviors, if you will. And I suppose there's some value to us received by that because the effect on the system is improved. But over time, that makes me, it reinvigorates my questioning or my colleagues, of the structure of the system and the wisdom of including the NFPs. What is a typical, I mean, I know there's some range, clearly we heard about the ranges, but a typical church bill is what, $2,000 to $3,000 annually?
Correct.
And what would the maximum reduction in annual rate likely be? If it's a $2,000 to $3,000 bill, they could save as much as half?
That's correct. The maximum credit is 50%. The other way they could save is by reducing their impervious area. And churches are charged based on per square foot of impervious area like all other non-residential properties, so there'd be some opportunity to reduce the bill and then get a credit on top of that.
So there's some good stuff in here and good opportunities for our religious community should this go forward, but I'm going to be a little bit of a wet blanket. It's, it's $1,500 a year, which is a lot of money to a household. It's a lot of money to a church. It's also a really slow payback on anything that's substantial in terms of investment. And so I worry a little bit that we would be essentially paying for those things really only that are likely to be done anyways. I see this as, hey, I'm putting an addition on, therefore I'm going to do some additional stuff and try and get some reimbursement for it. Not that that's bad in trying to help them, but when it's not available then to others, that makes me nervous. It's not, given the scenario about realistic paybacks, this isn't going to be the thing that causes somebody to pull their parking lot and put permeable pavers down. It's just not. That's not the kind of math in play. So there's, if it came to a vote, I would vote for it, I think, because probably I feel more strongly about trying to be helpful to these folks in some way. But I don't like it in its structure, and I think its actual value is probably less than we all are sitting here thinking as we look at $200,000. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other questions or comments from the council before we get to Commissioner Rankin's point? Commissioner Jose?
Thank you, Mayor. Excuse me. I actually also support this. I think it's a good first step in helping address some of the concerns of the church community and also making sure that steps are taken to mitigate some of the strain on our stormwater system. I think Commissioner Barnett has a point. It's not going to be necessarily the reason that any one project takes place, but if it becomes the impetus for making that project a little bit greener and help take a little bit of the strain off of the system, then all the better. So I think it's a good first step and look forward to its implementation, and I hope that there are a lot of churches in the area that will take advantage of it. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner. I am going to agree with a couple of things that both Commissioner Barnett and Commissioner Jose just said. First, Commissioner Barnett raised the issue of should this be limited to faith-based, not-for-profit organizations, and I would also be open to considering whether the cost share program could be available to tax-exempt organizations or property tax-exempt organizations, and here's my thinking. I think as a practical matter, we're going to get applications from tax-exempt organizations that have large amounts of runoff due to the physical structure of their buildings and their parking lots. And I'm immediately thinking of who comes to mind when you talk about those kinds of buildings and parking lots, and it's for the most part going to be faith-based organizations, but not necessarily. And there again, the focus would be on the property and not the activity that takes place on the property, which is something I'm also sensitive to. And so that's just a question that I raise, and whether we think that would impact at all upon the expected use of the cost share program. Because what we are trying to encourage is either as a standalone project, someone doing something to, at the first blush, to reduce their own fee, but more broadly for the benefit of the stormwater system. That would be something I think we would want to encourage. So if it was a tax-exempt organization, faith-based or not, I'd just like to have a conversation on that point. The other thing that we would try to encourage by doing this is, as Commissioner Jose said, if someone is going to undertake a capital project, and we see capital projects being undertaken by tax-exempt organizations as well as faith-based tax-exempt organizations, they do it all the time. I'm aware of a number that are underway right now. And as part of that project, if they were to, because of this opportunity, consider and actually do or undertake a element of that project that would decrease the stress on the system, so to speak, and further the goals of the stormwater program, I think that's something we would want to encourage. And this is not a perfect example, but just as an illustration. For example, when District 99 did all their parking lot work and they decided to go forward and use permeable pavers in a very large parking lot, and I'm not suggesting that's an immediate translation to any other organization or place in town, but that's just something that is an illustration that comes to my mind. And if we can do things that would encourage them to do that, take those kind of steps and be greener and be more mindful of this impact upon the stormwater system and further the goals of our stormwater program, both ours, the county, and beyond, I think that's a good thing. I'll also agree with Commissioner Barnett that I don't necessarily know if there isn't more value that we can try to tease out of this, and I realize and I agree this is a good first step. I really would like to accomplish two things, and maybe this is one of those and challenges for our staff, is I want to both mitigate the impact upon the tax-exempt organizations that are now dealing with the stormwater utility fee, and also encourage them to take the steps necessary to further the goals of the stormwater program, because I think that is where the benefit really rises and falls, which is they're not just doing a project for the sake of doing a project. It's not just a project they would already be doing, or at least that's not my desired outcome. It would be a project that now is either being done or is including an element of stormwater mitigation that wouldn't otherwise happen. And again, I realize that's one of those, maybe it's an and challenge to staff. And I know a great deal of time is put into this, but I would like to see if we can energize this with even more incentives and value for the organizations involved. And maybe what we do is we start with this and then we learn from actual experience as we have in other programs that we've tried, and then when we find out it's maybe not encouraging exactly as much as we like, we tweak it. Maybe that's the right answer. I don't know, but I do agree with elements of what Commissioner Barnett said in terms of increasing the enticement, if you will.
So the staff talked about that concept a lot when we were putting this together.
And I know you did.
And the way that we think you could both increase the value and entice more to take care of it is decrease or eliminate the local match that would be required. And that immediately would solve both value and enticement issues.
I would, as we continue this conversation, and it is an ongoing conversation, that's an element I would like to look into, as well as what the thought would be in terms of, and I apologize for not raising this earlier, what the thought would be in terms of broadening this to tax-exempt parcels and not just those that are faith-based. I think as a practical matter, we're going to get to the same place, but you might tell me that I'm way off base.
No, I think we looked at that too. I think the issue there is there's a handful of property tax exempt properties that are large, have engineers on staff and do projects all the time that would immediately qualify for these, and we would probably be giving grants to a lot of those entities such as Midwestern University, Good Samaritan Hospital, other governments. And the concern was then we wanted to make sure we put together a program that was targeted towards the religious institutions, which was discussed at the budget time. So certainly we can do all those things, but I think most or all the funding would go to entities other than churches under that type of program.
Fair enough, and I'm just struggling with the question that was raised about focusing on the activity that's taking place on the property, and we're really trying to focus, and I think we've been consistent throughout the stormwater program. The stormwater utility is trying to focus on the property, the parcel, the runoff, the impervious area, and not so much the activity that's taking place, or whether it's a business or residence. We're really trying to focus on stormwater management, and that's kind of what I'm still struggling with, and I realize there's no perfect solution to this, and I applaud the efforts that have been put forth to bring this forward, because, again, I think it's one of those and propositions that we're always throwing at you. I look forward to the continuing dialogue.
Hey, Mayor. Picking up on both your comments and Dave's, trying to stay focused on the parcel as opposed to the activity. Maybe one way to alleviate the concern about, is this going to end up being sort of gobbled up by folks who maybe aren't our target audience? What if we said that part of the recognition, certainly this is developed initially because of the recognition that we got some response from religious institutions primarily who were really struggling, but what if we were looking at it as, whether that was the impetus or not, that part of the consideration would be the parcel itself? And so maybe we said, this is designed to help certainly our not-for-profit or tax-exempt parcels, but in particular those that are, geographically challenged, right? To do the work on a smaller parcel is a whole lot tougher from an engineering standpoint and likely more expensive than, that's not fair because permeable pavers are permeable pavers, but if you're trying to make some of these ancillary
I know what you
adjustments
mean.
to improve and to reduce your runoff conditions, that's an easier engineering project on a larger parcel than it is on a smaller one. And so if we said something about, it was all tax exempt parcels but under some certain size, maybe we would help cause that to be, fix some of my concerns about picking out the activity as a driver and yet still staying consistent with the program being we're trying to figure out how to improve parcels.
It's an interesting point and a good suggestion, and we're not going to solve it right here tonight, but just listening to you speak, and this isn't, again, the wrong term, I'll say right off the bat, but it almost sort of raised a hardship threshold in my mind, where because of the size of the parcel, the location, and just other issues, availability, it gets complicated, but good point.
Even your comment, you said the word hardship, and that's what I wrote down. So I don't know how you judge this, but like, for example, when you apply for grants for something, you have to say your annual budget, or you have to show some sort of hardship. And if we say the goal of the program is to provide grants to groups that have a hardship, I think that would take out some of the groups that we're worried about gobbling up all the funding. I don't know how to word that.
Well, neither do I. I don't think but fair point, and I think I don't want to steer towards financial hardship because that gets us in a whole sticky wicket, but I think the parcel hardship, and hardship's the wrong word, so let's just back up the tape and take that word out because that's the wrong word, but were the unique aspects of the category of parcels that would make it a greater challenge than in other situations. I don't know. We're literally workshopping here tonight.
But I think the crux of why we're talking about this is we heard that it was a hardship for people. It wasn't just their lot size. It was, this is a significant impact to them financially, and that's why we're talking about it.
Right, but I think we have to be careful by
How you
making
word
that
it.
the measuring stick, because that
Sure.
opens it up to everybody who could claim that in all different ways, shapes, and forms. And again, I think it is best to be consistent and focus on the parcel. So I like Commissioner Barnett's idea of, is there some way to tie it to the parcel? I don't know. I don't know. We'll continue to think
Mayor.
about it.
Is there a legal reason why we would have to tie it to the parcel? Or could we have a grant program such as what's presented here? Is this going to undermine the foundation of the legal basis of this utility? If we adopt it as what's presented here?
I'm not going to speak of the village attorney, but I don't think so, because really we're not talking about a grant program, we're talking about a cost share program. And this is really something that is designed.
It says here, staff is proposing a grant program.
Well, I'm going to call it a cost share program.
But
It does say that, yes.
But couldn't we grant, hypothetically, could we not grant, have a grant program that says any property that more than 6 people live on, could I get a grant? And couldn't we do whatever? I'm just trying to understand what we can and can't do in a grant program, or a cost share program, or whatever we're trying to call it.
Yes, there's full discretion of the council to run both the stormwater utility program and any grants related thereto in any fashion the council sees fit.
So I guess what I'm trying to get at is this a separate, this is something completely separate from the stormwater utility. This is not like we're amending the utility to include grant program. This is just a separate program.
Correct.
So we could do whatever we wanted.
Pretty much.
Pretty much, within reason.
Always within reason.
Okay, I just want to be clear on this, thanks.
And I'm sorry, I didn't really appreciate your question initially.
Yeah, no, I just, there's all this discussion about being consistent, but the reason we're being consistent is philosophic. Our philosophy, not the legal structure of the utility.
I think that's right, and I'll take it further than that. I think I was probably in my brain being consistent was where I was coming from. But I think that's right. It's not a legal consistency. It's just the perspective of focusing on the goals of the program and managing runoff and using different physical properties of the parcels as justification for X as opposed to the activity that's conducted on it. I think what led to this, or at least initiated this conversation.
Thank you.
Understanding.
I just wanted to be
Sure.
clear on that, and I think, I wanted to be clear personally, and I think folks watching.
But I think it's no secret, the 9 parcel owners in town that have led the charge in terms of raising concerns with the impact of the utility. Other questions or comments at this stage?
Mayor, would you help me remember, I'd let Becky go first, but I
Oh,
want
yes.
to
Well, I-
dovetail,
yes, I
I want
would-
to
I
dovetail
was-
just like I think she intends to do.
No, agreed. I was just wrapping up, make sure there was anything on that topic before, thank you for the reminder. Before we came back to Commissioner Rankin on the related but separate topic.
Well, I just wanted to, again, put it out there. I think we heard from many of the church organizations that, or a few, I should say, not many, that a big construction project is way beyond their means. And, you know, there was one gentleman that was here and was saying that he was going to have to stop doing part of his food pantry because he just didn't have the resources. That's how it was affecting their church. So I wondered if we shouldn't possibly consider this lower rate, and it wouldn't be significant, but it would probably be significant to the people affected, offering a 10% lower rate than the other payers to tax exempt or church organizations to help, you know, recognize that the good they do in our town provide some sort of relief. Because there's some churches that just aren't going to be able to participate in a program like this. There are some that are going to take advantage and it's going to be great for them, but I feel like we're not addressing the entire community by just doing one option. It's just my thoughts. I don't know if anyone is interested in exploring that, but I just wanted to bring it up again since we are talking about the topic.
I think we're all thinking about it. I don't know if anyone else has a reaction to it. I just appreciate bringing it up again. I don't know if I have a reaction to it as I sit here right now. I still have some issues and concerns about focusing on certain activities as opposed to the parcels, but I understand your point, and I appreciate your thought into making the suggestion as a potential idea to explore.
Mayor, I just wanted to say, for all these not-for-profits, we just raised their stormwater fee 6.4%, just like everybody else in the village. I didn't support that at the time. I still don't support that. And the idea that, oh, well, we're giving a 10% rebate now, and we're going to increase it 10% next year, it just, I'm really troubled by the direction. Okay, we're going to raise it for everybody, and now we'll rebate it, but then we're going to raise it again next year. I'm very troubled. You know, I certainly appreciate the issue that we're raising, but and want to provide some relief, but I'm also concerned about philosophically, if we're concerned about consistency, we just hiked everybody's fee way up, and now we want to rebate, but then we're going to hike it way up again next year, and it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. So I'm just concerned about that personally.
Well, and I should be clear, I wasn't saying that we would rebate it. I was just saying going forward, if they were always 10% below the other payers, and that was my concept, so.
Yeah, and on that point, it's just, not to take issue with anything that anyone had said, because everyone's trying to come to a solution here that is consistent and yet also recognizes a request for some ability to mitigate an impact. And if we can do that, at least from my perspective, in a way that furthers the goals of the program and helps to mitigate runoff, then that would be, I think, entirely justifiable. We're finding it's easier said than done. But let's keep in mind that the increases are planned increases. So when we look at what our overall costs of the stormwater system are over a long period of time, there's planned increases over time. And whether we increase according to the plan or not is obviously a decision that we make every year, and I understand your position, Commissioner. I also understand that Commissioner Rankin is proposing to further tier the increases based on some criteria as a proposal. But all this would be part of a planned multi-year set of increases that are ultimately designed to generate funds sufficient to take care of the capital infrastructure and maintenance needs for our stormwater system. Just because we project that out, like anything else, doesn't mean we necessarily are going to do it every year, because we look at the information, statistics, actual projects shovel in the ground, what's been done, projects that have been completed, what impact have they had in mitigating stormwater, and if we don't need to follow the plan in terms of the increases, then we have the ability not to. But I just want to point that out, that there is actually a plan of increases over time to get to a determined funding goal for stormwater infrastructure and maintenance. That was more of an observation than a response. Commissioner.
You know, I commend Becky for bringing this forward. I would be interested in pursuing this and looking into it further down the road. My only question is, I understand the need, I understand the reason we have the stormwater utility fee, because it's a dedicated resource, or dedicated revenue stream for any bonding that we may do for stormwater management, and highly looked at by the bond house or the rating agencies. Can we get from staff what a 10% discount to the or to the nonprofits, in my case would be the religious organizations, churches, impact be on our bonding authority, and any possible impact on the rating itself by S&P, Moody's? Sorry, Moody's.
It would
Been
be
a long day, sorry.
It would be very small. The total revenue generated by all the property tax exempts is about 200,000 out of 3 point.
So we're talking to $20,000.
Yeah, and that would be all the not-for-profits. The religious institutions are a small portion of the property tax exempt category that I mentioned.
You don't have anything to do? Yeah. Yeah, with that said, I wouldn't have a problem with that all, Mayor.
Mayor, before, I think, as others have said, this is another creative way to try to look at how the impact has affected these users, but the goal of the stormwater utility, or one of them, is to use best management practices to handle our stormwater and our runoff in our village. I think, from my perspective, before I would get to the 10% reduction or discount, whatever we want to call it, I think more of the cost share and more of the best management practice ideas would have to be looked at per property before we could even grant that 10% off. There may or may not be opportunities on these properties for improvements, rain gardens. I know impervious pavers is probably the goal, and not cost effective as far as the cost share program that we just talked about tonight. But I think before I'd be willing to go down the road of a discount, I'd really want to see some more hold on from the not-for-profit or the tax exempt parcels to make sure that they're really doing what they can do to benefit our stormwater system, because like I do, like all of us do, we all benefit from a properly managed and properly funded stormwater system. So again, it's an interesting idea, but I think for me, having that kind of a buy-in or an acceptance of the program through some of these other options that we have already on the table would have to come first before I would entertain that idea for a discount.
Why not?
Commissioner?
Thank you, Mayor. I think Commissioner Newstadt's made some good points, and I too am reluctant to go in this direction at the moment. I hesitate to take dollars out of the stormwater utility, knowing that we're still underfunded, and to a significant degree, as the mayor described, we have a series of planned increases, and that's because we know, based on the engineering studies, that we're not currently funding stormwater enough in order to maintain the system that we have, let alone improve it. So I hesitate to take dollars out of that goal without getting the benefit of some reduction in the strain on the stormwater system itself. So that's why I support the grant program at the moment. If it gets tweaked in the manner that the mayor described or the Commissioner Barnett described, those are all things that I would strongly consider. But at the moment, the 10% reduction for one class of payers just doesn't fit with my idea of the structure of the utility. simply because we're, as Commissioner Neustadt said, we're all in this position where we benefit from a properly managed stormwater system. And I think we all, 48,000 some odd folks in Downers Grove have a stake in that, and we all need to contribute to it. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Commissioner Burnett?
Two things, at the risk of being a little bit of a wise guy, with your description of the go forward and its uncertainty, you can make a pretty good case that 8% is pretty de minimis in that equation too, because it's we don't know what those rate increases are going to end up being. They're going to be things we decide as we go along, and you're talking about $200,000 out of what will hopefully end up somewhere around $6 million. It's a pretty small number, but I want to just take this opportunity because we've heard both at the beginning of the conversation and Jeff brought it up at the end. One of our goals, excuse me, irrespective of parcel type or activity, is to over time encourage best practices, both design and management. Sorry, I got a frog going here. So I just want to remind everybody of the importance, at least from this commissioner's opinion, of some of the conversations we've had about our existing ordinance and runoff characteristics and engineering requirements going forward. There are going to be certainly people who take up the cause of improving their parcel because it's the right thing to do, but we're also going to continue to turn 200 or 400 substantial building permits every year. And I really encourage us to continue to press for getting to that. It's on our list, but let's not let it go by the wayside, because every time we have one of these conversations about trying to do things within the utility to encourage best practices, man, that's a huge one on the back end, and it has nothing to do with any kind of grants or whether we're all in agreement on a utility or not. It's just pure legislation about doing what we know should be done, and I'd like us to press on that. So,
strongly second what Commissioner Burnett just suggested.
Alrighty then. Other questions or comments? Crystal clear direction? We continue the conversation. Thank you very much.
And that's all the first reading that we will do tonight in this setting. We will talk about item C next week, and item D we will pick up in the committee room right after the conclusion of this meeting.
All right, then, thank you very much. On that note, we'll go to item 10, which is the mayor's report. I have no report at this time. It brings us to item 11, manager's report. Mr. Fieldman?
No report tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 12, attorney's report. Ms.
Thanks,
Petrarca?
Mayor. Thank you. Only one item tonight to present, and that's an ordinance authorizing a special use for 2535 Ogden Avenue to permit construction of a restaurant with a drive. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Item 13, council member, new business. Do any members of the village council have any items of new business that we didn't just discuss in the last conversation? Hearing none, that'll bring us to item 14. Do I have a motion to adjourn into the committee room to have the conversation on agenda item 9D as in David, which pertains to village facilities discussion?
So moved. Second.
Can I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Neustadt?
Aye.
Commissioner Durkin?
Aye.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner Rankin? Commissioner Rankin? Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you. Good night and happy Valentine's Day to everyone.